I had to close my father's 50-year-old business. Then my son revealed what he'd been planning since age 9. I, 45M, never thought I'd be writing this, but I need to get it off my chest. 6 months ago, I was forced to shut down my father's auto repair shop, a business that had been in our family for 3 generations. What happened next with my son left me questioning everything I thought I knew about family and legacy. Some background. I practically grew up in that shop. The smell of motor oil and the sound of tools clanking against metal were as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. My father taught me everything he knew, just like his father taught him. When Dad passed away 5 years ago, I took over, thinking I'd pass it on to my own son someday. The shop wasn't just a business, it was the heart of our family. Every Saturday, my wife would bring lunch for everyone, and we'd all eat together in the break room. My son started hanging around when he was just a kid, first playing with toy cars in the corner, then gradually learning to handle real tools. My father would always say, "A family that works together stays together." I believe that with all my heart. The trouble started about 3 years ago. The neighborhood began changing rapidly. New developments sprung up everywhere, bringing higher property taxes and a different clientele. Then came the announcement that nearly broke me. AutoFix, one of the biggest chain auto shops in the country, was opening just 2 blocks away. I wasn't too worried at first. We had loyal customers, some who'd been coming to us for decades. Mr. Johnson, who'd bought his first car from my grandfather, still brought all his vehicles to us. Mrs. Rodriguez trusted only us with her beloved '67 Mustang that her late husband had restored. These relationships, I thought, would keep us afloat, but I underestimated how aggressive the competition would be. AutoFix launched with prices we couldn't match and flashy promotions that drew in younger customers. They had a sleek online booking system, while we were still using a paper calendar and landline phone. My brother, 43M, who works in marketing, kept telling me we needed to modernize, but I was stubborn. "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," Dad used to say. I clung to those words like a lifeline. The first real warning sign came when our youngest mechanic, Jake, quit to work at AutoFix. He tried to explain that it wasn't just about the money. They had better equipment, ongoing training programs, and room for advancement. I took it personally, saw it as betrayal. Now I realize he was just being practical. Things started unraveling faster after that. Our old diagnostic equipment couldn't handle newer car models effectively. Repairs that used to take us an hour now took 3 because we lacked the right tools. Customers started complaining about our prices, not understanding that we couldn't offer AutoFix's rates because we didn't have their corporate backing and bulk supply deals. I tried everything I could think of to save the business. Took out a second mortgage on our house, much to my wife's distress. Started working 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Cut costs wherever possible, even stopped taking a salary myself. My wife picked up extra shifts at the hospital to help with our household expenses, but never complained. She just kept asking me to consider other options. The stress started affecting my health. I developed insomnia, lost weight, snapped at everyone. My relationship with my brother deteriorated when he suggested selling the business while it still had some value. "You're giving up on Dad's dream," I accused him. He shot back that Dad's dream wasn't to watch his son work himself into an early grave. The breaking point came last winter. 3 of our regular employees hadn't received their full wages for months, surviving on partial payments and promises. They stuck with me out of loyalty, but I could see the strain in their faces. The day Tom, my head mechanic of 20 years, had to ask for an advance to pay his daughter's medical bills, and I couldn't give it to him, that's when I knew it was over. My son was there the day I put up the going out of business sign. He didn't say much, just watched me with an unreadable expression. I assumed he was ashamed of me, the father who couldn't keep the family legacy alive. If only I'd known what was really going through his mind. The next few months were a blur of liquidation sales, paperwork, and heartbreaking goodbyes to loyal customers. I fell into a deep depression, barely leaving the house except for my new job as a mechanic at another local shop. My wife tried to tell me that closing the business didn't make me a failure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd let everyone down. My father, my employees, my family. Then came last week. My son asked me to meet him at our old favorite diner, the one where Dad used to take me for breakfast every Sunday. He brought this thick folder with him, and what he revealed left me speechless. Turns out, my son had been preparing for this moment for nearly a decade. He showed me notebooks dating back to when he was 9 years old, filled with childish drawings of what he thought the shop should look like in the future. These gradually evolved into more sophisticated plans as he grew older. By 13, he was reading business magazines and watching YouTube videos about auto shop management. At 15, He started secretly interviewing successful shop owners in other cities when he was supposedly at summer camp. The folder contained detailed analysis of where we went wrong, but more importantly, comprehensive plans for how to make it right. He'd been taking business and accounting classes in high school and college not just for the credits, but with our shop specifically in mind. He had spreadsheets comparing different diagnostic equipment brands, cost-benefit analyses of various service packages, and even mock-ups for a mobile app. What really floored me was learning about his network. Remember Jake, the mechanic who left us for AutoFix? My son had stayed in touch with him, learning everything about their operations, strengths, and weaknesses. He'd been in contact with successful independent shop owners across the state, getting advice and insights. And my brother, the one I'd barely spoken to in months, had been mentoring him the whole time. The most surprising part? He'd already found potential investors. 3 of them, all successful business owners in our community who remembered getting their first cars fixed at our shop. They weren't just interested in the business plan. They were invested in the story of a third-generation family business reinventing itself for the modern age. My son's vision isn't just about reopening the shop, it's about transforming it. His plan includes a hybrid model that combines traditional repair services with modern technology. He wants to introduce a subscription-based maintenance program for regular customers, mobile diagnostic services for fleet vehicles, and specialized restoration services for classic cars like Mrs. Rodriguez's Mustang. He even has ideas for apprenticeship programs to train the next generation of mechanics. The numbers make sense too. He's done his homework on everything from equipment costs to salary structures. The investor model he's proposed would give us enough capital to start fresh while maintaining family control. He's even found ways to cut operational costs that I never considered, like partnering with local vocational schools for intern programs. What really got me was how he plans to honor my father's legacy. He wants to create a small museum corner in the new shop, displaying old tools and photos from our history. It's not about living in the past, he explained, but about building on its foundation. I've spent the last week going over every detail of his plan. It's not perfect, there are risks and challenges we'll need to address, but it's more thoroughly thought out than anything I ever did with the business. My son saw the future coming and prepared for it, while I was too busy trying to preserve the past. The investors are meeting with us next week. My son wants me as a partner, says my experience and relationships in the community are crucial to making this work. He's right. We need both his vision and my knowledge to make this successful. My brother and I finally talked properly yesterday. He apologized for not telling me about my son's plans sooner, but he was right. I needed to learn some hard lessons on my own. Sometimes you have to let something die so it can be reborn, he said. It hurt to hear, but he's not wrong. My wife's reaction to all this was simply to smile and say she's known about it for years. Apparently, she used to help our son with his research when he was younger, knowing he'd tell me when the time was right. I'm still processing the fact that my entire family was in on this long-term plan while I was blindly trying to maintain the status quo. Looking back, I realized my father's true legacy wasn't the shop itself. It was the values he instilled in us. Hard work, dedication, taking care of people, and most importantly, family. My son understood this better than I did. He saw that preserving the legacy meant adapting it for a new era, not just clinging to the way things were. So here I am, about to embark on a new chapter of our family's story. This time, I'm following my son's lead. The thought both terrifies and excites me. But somehow, I think my father would be proud. He always said the best mechanics know when to repair something and when to rebuild it from the ground up. Turns out, the same is true for family businesses. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for the supportive comments and awards. To address some common questions. 1. Yes, we're aware of the risks involved in reopening. My son's plan actually addresses many of the concerns you've raised about competition and market changes. 2. No, we're not taking out massive loans. The investor model is actually quite conservative and leaves us with manageable debt levels. 3. For those asking about the original employees, yes, we plan to offer positions to our former team members first. Most of them are excited about the possibility. 4. Several people have asked about succession planning. Yes, we're building that into the business structure from the start this time. I'll post an update after our meetings with the investors next week. And to the person who asked, yes, Mrs. Rodriguez still has the Mustang, and yes, she's already asked to be our first customer when we reopen. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.